There is a test that almost no one talks about. Not when Allah makes you wait, but when Allah makes you stop waiting. You don't feel desperate anymore. You puffer not counting signs. You've been not begging the same way. And that scares you because you think something is wrong. But what if this quiet is not loss? What if it is control being removed? What if Allah is not preparing the answer, but preparing your heart? If you stare in that strange place where you still believe, but you are no longer attached, then listen carefully, because this phase means Allah is doing something deeper than giving you what you asked for. Waiting does not always end with an answer. Sometimes it ends with silence settling into the heart. You wake up one day and notice you are no longer checking, no longer asking, no longer measuring time. The urgency that once filled your chest has softened without explanation. Nothing around you has changed, yet something inside you has. This is often the first sign that Allah has begun a deeper work. Not in your situation, but in your relationship with it. At first, this change feels unsettling rather than peaceful. You wonder why the longing has quieted instead of grown stronger. You question whether your faith has weakened or your hope has faded. But what is actually happening is a transfer of weight. Allah is slowly lifting the burden of expectation from your heart. What once pressed heavily on your thoughts is being released without noise. Many people believe waiting is an act of effort, but real waiting is an act of surrender. It reaches a point where the heart can no longer hold tension without breaking. Allah in His mercy ends that strain before it damages you. He does not rush the answer, but He calms the one who asked. This is not neglect, it is protection. The heart is being spared from exhaustion. It was never meant to endure. When waiting quietly ends, the heart stops demanding proof. You no longer need reassurance from people or signs from circumstances. The need to control the outcome weakens, even if the desire itself still exists. This shift often feels like emotional distance, but it is actually emotional balance. Allah is teaching the heart how to exist without constant pressure. Peace begins to replace persistence. There is a subtle moment when prayer itself changes. The words become fewer, but more sincere. You stop explaining your pain to Allah as if He needs clarity. You speak less, trust more, and leave longer pauses in your supplication. This is not a decline in devotion. It is a refinement of it. The heart has learned that Allah understands without explanation. This phase often arrives after deep disappointment or long patience. It comes when the heart has reached the edge of its own strength. Allah allows you to reach that edge, so you stop leaning on endurance alone. When waiting ends quietly, reliance begins fully. You are no longer surviving on hope alone, but on trust. And trust does not demand constant emotional intensity. Some mistake this calm for indifference, but indifference is empty. This calm is full. Though quiet, it holds acceptance without resignation. You still care, but you are no longer consumed. Allah removes obsession before it turns into harm. He teaches the heart how to want, without worshipping what it wants. When waiting ends, time itself feels different. Days no longer revolve around anticipation. Life resumes its natural rhythm. You laugh without guilt and rest without anxiety. This is not because the matter no longer matters, but because it no longer defines you. Allah restores balance, so the heart does not collapse around one outcome. This shift often happens without permission. You do not choose to stop waiting. It simply happens. That is because Allah intervenes when the heart is no longer safe. Managing expectation. He knows when hope begins to hurt instead of heal. Ending the wait is His way of preserving faith. It is mercy disguised as stillness. In this quiet phase, clarity is absent, but panic is also gone. You do not know what will happen, yet you are no longer afraid of not knowing. This is one of the rarest spiritual states. It means the heart is no longer demanding certainty to remain faithful. Allah has loosened the knot between belief and outcome. Faith stands on its own. Waiting quietly ends when the heart learns it cannot force destiny. It realizes that effort has limits, and control is an illusion. Allah allows this realization not to humble you, but to free you. When control fades, anxiety follows it out. The heart begins to breathe again. This breath is the beginning of peace. There is also grief in this stage, though it is subtle. You grieve the version of yourself that lived on anticipation. You release the identity built around longing. Allah does not shame this grief. He allows it because every transformation requires letting go of what once felt necessary. Even hope can be reshaped. When waiting ends, du'a becomes less transactional. You stop praying to receive and start praying to align. Your heart no longer bargains with Allah. It simply stands in submission. This is a powerful shift, though it feels quiet. Allah values this posture deeply. This stage cannot be rushed or manufactured. It arrives when the soul is ready. Allah chooses the timing, not you. That is why it feels sudden and unexpected. One day you are waiting with intensity, and the next you are simply present. This presence is not empty. It is anchored. Waiting quietly ends when the heart accepts that Allah's wisdom does not need emotional reinforcement. You no longer fuel faith with constant feeling. Faith becomes stable, not reactive. It remains whether you feel strong or weak. Allah builds this stability intentionally. There is strength in no longer needing to ask when. That question dissolves naturally, not forcefully. You trust that if the time comes, it will come without chasing, and if it does not, you will still stand. This realization does not make you cold, it makes you resilient. Allah prepares the heart for all outcomes. At this stage, people around you may not understand you. They may think you have moved on too quickly or lost interest, but they do not see the internal shift. Allah has moved you from anticipation to surrender, from tension to trust, from waiting to resting. Waiting quietly ends when peace becomes independent of results. This is one of the greatest spiritual thresholds. It means the heart has learned to belong to Allah first. Everything else becomes secondary, even the things once held most dearly. This phase is not the end of the story. It is the end of strain. Allah does not stop the process. He deepens it. He prepares the heart to receive without being owned by what it receives, or to lose without being destroyed. This is divine preparation. If you are in this stage, do not rush yourself to feel differently. Do not force longing back into your heart. Allow Allah to finish what He has started. Waiting has done its work. Now trust must do its own. There comes a moment when the heart notices something unusual. The desire is still there, but its grip has loosened. What once pulled your thoughts relentlessly no longer commands the same power. You remember what you wanted, yet it no longer owns your emotional center. This shift feels unsettling because desire once gave your days direction. Without it, the heart feels exposed. But this exposure is not danger. It is freedom beginning to take shape. Desire losing its grip does not mean desire disappears. It simply means it no longer controls your peace. You can think about the matter without your chest tightening. You can remember without spiraling into longing. Allah gently reduces the emotional charge so the heart can survive without constant intensity. This is not coldness. It is balance being restored. The heart is learning moderation after excess. At first, this detachment can feel like guilt. You may wonder why you are not yearning the same way anymore. You may question whether your sincerity has weakened. But Allah does not measure faith by emotional pressure. He measures it by steadiness. When desire loosens, faith often deepens quietly. Desire is powerful, but it was never meant to rule the heart. When it does, it becomes a source of anxiety rather than motivation. Allah allows desire to exhaust itself so it no longer demands worship-like attention. He separates wanting from clinging. This separation is subtle and gradual, and it protects the heart from collapse. Many people fear this stage because intensity feels like proof of care. They believe that if desire fades, meaning fades with it. But Allah teaches that meaning does not come from emotional force. It comes from alignment with His will. Desire that rests instead of burns is not weaker. It is purified. When desire loses its grip, imagination also quiets. You stop replaying future scenes in your mind. You stop building emotional homes in possibilities. Allah draws the heart back into the present moment. This grounding is necessary. The heart was never meant to live in imagined tomorrows. This stage often arrives after long internal struggle. The heart grows tired of carrying hope like a weight. Allah responds by lightening the load. He does not remove hope, but He removes desperation. Hope becomes gentle instead of demanding. It rests instead of pushes. Some feel afraid when desire loosens because it feels like losing momentum. You worry that without longing, nothing will move forward. But Allah does not rely on your emotional force to move destiny. What is written advances whether you cling or release. Your peace does not delay His decree. When desire loses control, the heart becomes more observant. You begin to see how much energy was being drained. You notice how often your mood depended on imagined outcomes. Allah allows this awareness so healing can begin. Awareness itself is a mercy. It brings clarity without pain. This is also the stage where patience changes form. It is no longer active endurance. It becomes quiet acceptance. You are not forcing yourself to wait. You simply are. This is a higher level of patience, one that does not exhaust the soul. Desire often narrows vision. It makes everything else feel secondary. When its grip loosens, life widens again. You notice blessings you overlooked. You reconnect with parts of yourself that were neglected. Allah restores perspective gently. The heart regains depth. There is humility in this phase. You realize how little control you ever had. Desire made you feel involved in the outcome. Detachment reveals the truth. Allah was always in charge. This realization is not humiliating. It is relieving. Responsibility lifts from the heart. When desire loses its grip, du'a becomes quieter but stronger. You stop pleading from urgency and start asking from trust. Your prayers are no longer driven by fear of loss. They are shaped by acceptance of Allah's wisdom. This shift transforms the quality of connection. It deepens sincerity. You may notice that emotional triggers weaken. Words, reminders, or situations that once stirred longing now pass gently. This does not mean you have forgotten. It means the heart has healed enough to remain steady. Allah strengthens emotional resilience this way. It is preparation, not withdrawal. This phase teaches the heart how to exist without fixation. You learn that you can function fully without one desire dominating everything. This independence is powerful. Allah does not want the heart fragile. He wants it rooted. Desire losing its grip often precedes major spiritual growth. The heart becomes more receptive to guidance. Noise fades, and intuition sharpens. Allah clears space so He can fill it with something better. But first, the old attachment must loosen. Some people try to force this detachment and fail because it cannot be forced. Allah alone decides when the heart is ready. When it happens naturally, it lasts, and it feels gentle rather than violent. This gentleness is a sign of divine timing. When desire loosens, comparison also fades. You stop measuring your life against others. You no longer feel behind or deprived. Allah restores contentment by removing fixation. Contentment does not require possession. It requires trust. This stage can feel quiet to others but monumental within. No one sees the internal shift, but Allah sees it clearly. He sees a heart learning to want without demanding. This is a rare state, and it is deeply valued. Desire losing its grip is not the end of caring. It is the end of suffering. Allah does not strip the heart of feeling. He strips it of harm. What remains is clean, balanced, and safe, ready for whatever comes next. If you are here, do not rush to reattach. Do not fear the calm. Allah is not distancing you from goodness. He is protecting your heart from dependency. Desire has done its work. Now trust must take the lead. Detachment often arrives quietly, and confusion follows soon after. You notice that your emotional reactions are slower, softer, less dramatic. What once shook you now passes through without leaving damage. This change can feel unfamiliar, even unsettling. You may wonder whether something inside you has gone numb, but numbness is empty, and this state is not empty at all. Confusion grows because you expected clarity, not calm. You thought patience would sharpen longing or strengthen desire. Instead, Allah introduces distance between you and your emotions. This distance is not absence, it is perspective. When the heart steps back, it begins to see more clearly. Allah does this so faith is not ruled by emotional waves. Many people mistake this phase for spiritual decline. They assume strong faith must feel intense, but intensity is not always depth. Allah teaches the heart to remain steady rather than stirred. This steadiness is more difficult to maintain than excitement, and that is why it is tested. Detachment feels confusing because it removes familiar patterns. You no longer respond the way you used to. Old triggers no longer pull the same reactions. You begin to feel unfamiliar with yourself. Allah allows this temporary disorientation so a new foundation can form. Old emotional habits must dissolve before new stability emerges. In this stage, questions multiply instead of answers. You ask why your emotions are quieter. You ask whether your heart has changed too much. You ask whether something important has been lost. But Allah is not asking you to understand. He is asking you to trust. Understanding will come later. Detachment does not mean you stop caring. It means you stop clinging. The heart still holds concern, but it releases ownership. This distinction is subtle but powerful. Allah trains the heart to care without collapsing. This is emotional maturity shaped through faith. Confusion deepens when prayers feel different. You may notice fewer tears and less urgency. The words come easily, but the intensity is gone. This can feel like distance from Allah, but in truth, it is closeness without desperation. The heart has learned that Allah does not need emotional proof. This phase often exposes how much identity was tied to longing. When longing fades, you feel undefined. You are no longer the one waiting desperately. You are simply present. Allah allows this loss of identity so a stronger one can form, one rooted in submission, not struggle. Detachment feels uncomfortable because it removes drama. The mind no longer has a story to replay. Silence replaces narrative. This silence is where Allah works most deeply. It is not empty, it is active with unseen change. But because it is quiet, it feels confusing. Some try to force emotion back, thinking it keeps faith alive. They revisit old pain to feel something familiar. But Allah does not want you anchored to suffering. He wants you anchored to Him. Detachment breaks the cycle of emotional dependency. It creates space for real peace. In this stage, the heart learns to exist without constant reassurance. You no longer need signs to stay faithful. You no longer panic when nothing happens. This calm without confirmation is rare, and it is evidence of growing trust. Confusion arises because control is fading. When emotions are strong, they give the illusion of involvement. Detachment removes that illusion. You realize how little control you had. This realization can feel disorienting, but it is also freeing. This phase teaches the heart to separate belief from feeling. You believe even when you feel neutral. You trust even when nothing stirs inside. Allah strengthens faith by removing its emotional crutches. What remains is solid and durable. Detachment also softens fear. When you stop clinging to outcomes, fear loses power. You no longer imagine worst-case scenarios. The future becomes less threatening. Allah calms fear by loosening attachment. Safety shifts inward. Confusion is part of recalibration. The heart is adjusting to a new rhythm. Old emotional patterns no longer fit. New ones are forming quietly. Allah allows this period, so the heart can stabilize. Rushing it only delays peace. This stage often feels lonely. Others may not understand your calm. They may expect urgency or sadness. But your heart is elsewhere now. Allah has moved you inward. Solitude becomes less heavy and more reflective. Detachment reveals how much noise once lived inside. With emotions quieter, thoughts slow down. You notice details you ignored before. Life becomes less overwhelming. Allah uses this stillness to realign priorities. Clarity emerges gradually. You may worry that detachment means you no longer care about the outcome, but caring without clinging is strength. Allah does not remove love or hope. He removes harm. What remains is safe and balanced. This confusion is not a sign of loss. It is a sign of transition. The heart is crossing from emotional faith to grounded faith. This crossing feels unstable at first, but Allah guides every step. If you are confused right now, do not rush to label it. Do not force interpretation. Sit with the quiet. Let Allah complete the shift. Detachment is not distance from Allah. It is distance from what once distracted you from Him. Control often disguises itself as patience. You tell yourself you are trusting Allah, yet deep inside you are still managing expectations. You imagine outcomes, timelines, and reasons. You rehearse acceptance while secretly deciding what would be acceptable. Allah allows this for a time because the heart needs to discover its own limits. Eventually, control becomes too heavy to carry. There comes a moment when managing the future feels exhausting. You can no longer calculate how things should unfold. The mind grows tired of planning emotional responses in advance. This exhaustion is not failure. It is the signal that the heart has reached the edge of its own authority. Allah steps in when the heart can no longer pretend to lead. When control is removed, it does not happen dramatically. There is no announcement or sudden event. It slips away quietly, almost unnoticed at first. You realize one day that you no longer feel the urge to interfere. You stop adjusting expectations to protect yourself. This quiet surrender is one of the deepest acts of faith. Control gives the illusion of safety. It makes the heart believe that preparation can prevent pain. Allah removes this illusion gently. He shows the heart that safety was never in planning. It was always in reliance. When this truth settles, fear begins to lose its grip. At this stage, the heart stops negotiating with destiny. You no longer say, if this happens, then I will be okay. You release conditions you didn't know you were holding. Allah does not accept partial surrender. He waits until the heart is ready to let go fully. That readiness is a gift, not a loss. When control fades, imagination also quiets. You stop rehearsing conversations that may never happen. You stop building emotional shelters in possible futures. The present moment becomes enough. Allah grounds the heart here so it can breathe. Peace enters through presence. Many people fear this stage because control feels like involvement. Letting go feels like disengagement. But Allah does not ask you to stop caring. He asks you to stop commanding. The heart learns the difference between responsibility and ownership. This distinction restores humility. This phase teaches the heart that Allah does not need assistance. You are not managing outcomes alongside Him. You are not co-authoring destiny. You are a servant, not a supervisor. This realization is not diminishing. It is liberating. When control is removed, anxiety loses its fuel. Anxiety thrives on imagined authority. Without control, there is nothing to defend. The heart stops bracing for impact. Allah replaces tension with trust. This replacement feels unfamiliar at first. Some experience sadness when control leaves. They mourn the sense of involvement it gave them. They miss feeling prepared. Allah allows this grief because it is part of release. Even control must be grieved before peace can settle. At this stage, du'a becomes an act of placement rather than pressure. You place the matter with Allah and step back. You no longer push emotion into your prayers. You leave space for Allah's will to move freely. This posture is deeply respected. Control often narrows vision. It makes the heart focus on one path only. When it is removed, other possibilities quietly appear. You become open to outcomes you once resisted. Allah widens perspective by removing fixation. Expansion follows surrender. This is also where trust stops being emotional and becomes structural. It is no longer based on feeling hopeful. It becomes the framework of how you exist. You assume Allah's wisdom without needing reassurance. This trust is stable. When control ends, comparison fades. You stop measuring progress against others. You stop asking why someone else arrived sooner. Allah removes control so envy cannot survive. Contentment grows naturally. There is dignity in this stage. The heart no longer begs life to cooperate. It stands calmly, knowing that what comes will come correctly. Allah restores self-respect through surrender. You no longer chase peace. You carry it. Some doors only open after control is released, not because Allah was waiting to give, but because the heart was not ready to receive without being owned. Allah protects the heart before granting anything that could replace Him. This phase can feel quiet to the outside world. No one sees the internal handover, but Allah sees it clearly. He sees a heart no longer interfering with His plan. This obedience without drama is powerful. Control is often mistaken for strength, but real strength is standing without it. Allah teaches this lesson slowly. He does not tear control away. He lets it fall when the heart is ready. When control is removed, outcomes lose their power to define you. Success does not inflate you. Loss does not destroy you. Allah builds this balance intentionally. It is a shield against future trials. If you feel lighter without knowing why, control has likely ended. Do not rush to replace it. Do not reach for new attachments. Let Allah remain in charge. He removed control because the heart is finally safe without it. Peace does not always follow clarity. Sometimes it arrives while questions remain unanswered. You notice calm settling into your chest, even though nothing has been resolved. The mind still lacks certainty, yet the heart is no longer restless. This contradiction can feel confusing at first, but it is one of the clearest signs that Allah has stepped in. The heart is accustomed to needing explanations to feel safe. It believes understanding will bring peace. Allah gently breaks this assumption. He gives tranquility without providing reasons. This teaches the heart that safety comes from Him, not from knowledge. When peace arrives before answers, fear loses its leverage. You are no longer afraid of the unknown. The future stops feeling like a threat. Allah replaces anxiety with acceptance. This acceptance is quiet but powerful. This stage often feels unreal. You expect panic, yet it does not come. You expect sadness, yet it stays distant. The heart responds with steadiness instead. Allah gives this steadiness to protect faith from collapse. He knows the heart cannot carry uncertainty and fear at the same time, because without answers reshapes trust. Trust no longer depends on outcomes. It becomes rooted in Allah's character. You believe in His wisdom even when His plan is hidden. This is advanced faith. It does not require emotional reinforcement. In this phase, the mind may still ask questions, but the heart does not follow. Thoughts come and go without control. They no longer spiral into worry. Allah allows thoughts to exist without ruling the heart. This separation brings relief. Many people wait for peace as proof that things will work out. But Allah gives peace even when things may change completely. This teaches the heart not to attach peace to results. Peace becomes internal, and internal peace cannot be taken. When peace arrives first, waiting ends naturally. You stop anticipating updates. You stop watching for movement. Life continues without emotional suspension. Allah restores normalcy gently. The heart returns to balance. This stage reveals how much turmoil once lived inside. You realize how heavy constant anticipation was. The quiet now feels spacious. Allah replaces inner noise with calm. This calm creates room for reflection. Peace before answers also deepens humility. You accept that you do not need to know everything. You release the demand for control. Allah teaches contentment through uncertainty. This contentment strengthens the soul. In this phase, faith becomes less visible but more durable. There are fewer emotional highs, but there is also less collapse. Allah stabilizes belief by smoothing extremes. The heart becomes resilient. This peace does not mean you stop caring. It means you stop fighting reality. You remain open without resistance. Allah removes inner conflict first. External outcomes follow His timing. Many people misunderstand this stage and fear complacency. They worry that peace means giving up. But peace is not surrendering effort. It is surrendering anxiety. Allah separates the two clearly. When peace arrives, prayer feels lighter. You speak without urgency. You trust without pressure. Allah accepts these prayers deeply. They come from surrender, not fear. This calm often brings gratitude. You appreciate small moments again. You enjoy daily life without distraction. Iman restores joy by removing fixation. Gratitude grows naturally. Peace before answers also prepares the heart for any outcome. You are ready to receive or release. You no longer need things to go a certain way to remain whole. Allah builds this readiness intentionally. This stage cannot be forced. It is given. Allah chooses when the heart is ready for calm. When it arrives, it stays quietly. It does not announce itself. There is safety in this phase. You are no longer vulnerable to emotional shocks. Loss does not devastate you. Gain does not destabilize you. Allah anchors the heart. If you feel calm while life remains uncertain, do not doubt it. Do not question whether something is wrong. Allah sometimes gives peace as the answer itself. Other answers may follow later. This peace is not the end of the journey. It is the foundation for what comes next. Allah ensures the heart is steady before the future unfolds. Stability comes first. When peace arrives before answers, it is a mercy. It means Allah has taken responsibility for your heart. He is carrying what you no longer need to hold. Trust this gift. Let the calm remain. Do not rush clarity. Allah knows when understanding is necessary. For now, peace is enough. There comes a point when the heart notices it is no longer bargaining with the future. You no longer say you will be content only if things turn out a certain way. The emotional conditions quietly dissolve. You still have preferences, but they no longer define your stability. This is when attachment to outcomes loosens completely. Allah brings the heart to this place with care. Attachment often hides in hope itself. You hope, but only in one direction. You trust, but with expectations. Allah does not remove hope, He purifies it. When hope becomes open-handed, the heart is finally safe. This safety allows faith to stand without fear. At this stage, acceptance is no longer forced. You are not convincing yourself to be okay. You simply are. The heart has stopped rehearsing disappointment. Allah ends this rehearsal by removing the need for it. Peace becomes natural. When outcomes lose their power, emotional volatility fades. Good news does not overwhelm. Difficult news does not break you. Allah stabilizes the heart so it remains centered. This balance is intentional. It prepares the soul for life's unpredictability. This phase reveals how much energy was once spent managing expectations. You realize how exhausting that process was. Allah lifts that burden quietly. The heart feels lighter, freer. Life becomes less tense. Detachment from outcomes does not mean detachment from effort. You still act responsibly. You still make choices with intention, but you are no longer emotionally invested in results. Allah teaches the heart to do its part and leave the rest. In this stage, gratitude becomes more consistent. You appreciate what is present without measuring it against what is missing. Comparison fades naturally. Allah replaces desire with contentment. This contentment is resilient. The heart also becomes less reactive. Situations that once triggered strong emotions now pass calmly. Allah strengthens emotional boundaries. The heart no longer spills into fear or excitement. It stays grounded. This detachment brings dignity. You no longer beg circumstances to cooperate. You stand firmly, knowing Allah governs outcomes. This posture commands inner respect. The heart no longer chases reassurance. Many people fear this stage because they think it will make them passive, but it does not weaken ambition. It purifies it. You work without anxiety. You strive without attachment. Allah refines intention. When the heart is no longer attached, fear of loss diminishes. Loss becomes survivable. The future feels less threatening. Allah replaces fear with trust. This trust is not loud. This phase often brings emotional maturity. You respond thoughtfully instead of impulsively. You pause before reacting. Allah slows the heart so wisdom can lead. This restraint is strength. Detachment also protects the heart from disappointment. You can face reality without collapse. Allah builds resilience by removing dependency. The heart stands independently of circumstance. In this stage, du'a becomes an offering. Rather than a request, you present your hopes without demand. You trust Allah's decision fully. This surrender deepens connection. It strengthens faith. The heart also becomes more present. You stop living ahead of yourself. You return to now. Allah grounds the heart in the moment. This presence brings calm. This detachment is not indifference. It is alignment. You align with Allah's will instead of resisting it. This alignment creates peace. The heart flows with life. Many blessings arrive only after this stage, not because Allah was delaying, but because the heart was not ready. Allah protects you from gifts that would dominate you. Readiness matters. When attachment ends, identity shifts. You no longer define yourself by what you are waiting for. You simply exist. Allah restores wholeness. The heart becomes complete. This stage is quiet but profound. Others may not notice the change, but you feel it deeply. Allah has restructured your inner world. Stability replaces struggle. If you have reached this point, do not look back. Do not reattach out of fear. Trust the calm. Allah has freed your heart for a reason. Whatever comes next will not own you.